Imagine waking up one morning in your peaceful village. The sun is rising, children are playing, and life feels calm. And then, a horn sounds in the distance. Suddenly, the ground shakes with the pounding of boots, metal clashes, and the screams of terrified villagers. Longships appear on the horizon, and your life is about to change forever. This wasn't a movie scene, it was reality. Vikings, the warriors from Scandinavia, weren't just famous for their raids and explorations. They were also notorious for the unspeakable things they did to the wives and women of the villages they conquered. What exactly happened to these women? What horrors did they face, and why did the Vikings act this way? By the end of this video, you'll see a side of history that's brutal, terrifying, and unforgettable. Quick question before we dive deeper. If you were living in that time, what would you grab first? The sword, the gold, or the hope that you might survive? Spoiler, surviving often wasn't easy. To understand what happened to these women, we first need to understand the Vikings themselves. Vikings came from what we now know as Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. They weren't just raiders. They were a complex society of warriors, traders, and explorers. By day, they farmed, fished, and lived like any ordinary people. By night, or rather whenever opportunity struck, they became fearsome raiders. Men were trained from a young age to fight, to sail, and to protect their clans. They valued strength, courage, and strategy. Women in Viking society had responsibilities too. They ran households, raised children, managed farms, and sometimes even oversaw trading activities while men were away. Viking women had rights unheard of in other parts of Europe. They could own property, inherit land, and run businesses. But here's the catch. These rights were mostly for women within their own society. Women from conquered villages were treated very differently. Respect stopped at the village border. Imagine the same people who trusted women with land and money could also enslave, humiliate, and control them once they were outsiders. That contradiction defines the terrifying reality of Viking raids. And the women caught in the middle? Their lives were never the same. Viking raids were sudden, violent, and terrifying. A village might be enjoying a calm morning when a longship's horn blares. Villagers had minutes or seconds to prepare, and for most it was already too late. Raids weren't always about treasure. Sometimes Vikings attacked for revenge, other times for political power, and often just for the thrill of chaos. Monasteries, villages, towns, they were all targets. And when they conquered a place, the spoils weren't just gold, livestock, or weapons. Women and children were considered part of the loot. Take this into perspective. In many villages, men were killed to end resistance, and women were captured to humiliate the remaining population. The message was clear: resist us, and everything you love will be taken from you. The fear spread far faster than the Viking army itself. Pattern interrupt. You might be thinking, wait, were they really that evil? Well, yes and no. They weren't mindless monsters. They were highly strategic. Every action, every raid, every captured woman served a purpose. And here's a chilling thought. If you lived in that village, you might be hiding in a barn or a forest, praying that you aren't found. But for many, hiding wasn't enough. Captured women were often subjected to years of uncertainty, trauma, and fear. Once the village fell, women were the most vulnerable. Some were enslaved outright, forced to work in Viking households, farms, or ships. Others were coerced into marriages, often to the very men who had just killed their husbands or fathers. Historical sources, including sagas, chronicles, and archaeological evidence, reveal the depth of suffering endured by these women. They were torn from homes, families, and everything familiar. Witnessing violence before even understanding what was happening became part of their new, terrifying reality. But there's more. Not all stories end in despair. Some women adapted to their new circumstances. They learned the language, customs, and rules of Viking households. In rare cases, some even gained influence or property within their captor's family. This survival didn't erase trauma, but it gave them a chance to endure, and sometimes to thrive. Here's a pause. Imagine being forced to call the man who killed your husband, husband. It's unimaginable. And yet for some women, this was reality. The horrors these women faced weren't random. They were part of a calculated Viking strategy. And the things they endured will shock you even more. So what were these unspeakable acts? Let's break it down. Forced marriages were common. Women were compelled to marry their captors, turning personal loss into a public symbol of conquest. Sexual slavery was another horrific reality. Humiliation, psychological abuse, and public shaming were tools used to break morale and demonstrate power. Vikings paraded women as trophies. Sometimes, Women were given to other clans as bargaining chips. It was a message: resist us, and everything you love will be destroyed. Here's a little humorous break, because we all need one in a dark story. Viking helmets didn't have horns. Shocking, right? That childhood dream of epic battles with horned helmets. False advertising. But make no mistake, real-life Viking brutality, horns optional, horror guaranteed. These acts weren't about random cruelty. They were strategic, calculated, and designed to terrorize. The psychological impact on women was immense. Fear, grief, anger, and helplessness coexisted in every moment. Even women who survived physically carried emotional scars for life. Some sagas recount women who cleverly navigated their captors' households, using intelligence and wit to survive. Others resisted outright, sometimes escaping or plotting revenge. These stories remind us that even in the darkest situations, human resilience can shine through. But there's more. The cultural context of Vikings makes this even more fascinating and disturbing. Why did a society that respected its own women treat outsiders so cruelly? Let's explore. Not every woman fell victim entirely. Some adapted to Viking society, gaining influence or even power. Learning customs, forming alliances, and understanding the rules of the household were critical survival strategies. Some women took daring risks, escaping to other villages, hiding in forests, or even exacting revenge on their captors. These rare instances of courage show the human capacity to endure against incredible odds. Pattern interrupt. Imagine accidentally joining the most feared army in Europe and then managing to climb the social ladder. Talk about networking. The contrast is stark. Viking women in their own society had rights and respect, while captive women endured cruelty and humiliation. Understanding this helps explain Viking culture. Loyalty mattered, but outsiders were expendable. Transition, but let's step back. How did this duality shape Viking society as a whole? Vikings had a paradoxical view of women. Within their own families, women could own property, inherit wealth, and run businesses. But outsiders, conquered women were tools, symbols, and pawns. This explains the brutality. It wasn't random. It was strategic. Fear, control, and humiliation were part of the Viking mindset when dealing with enemies. The duality of respect for their own women versus cruelty toward outsiders makes Vikings both fascinating and terrifying. Quick thought. It's like being a superhero at home but a villain at work. Only in this case, the consequences were life-changing, or life-ending for many women. History is full of lessons. Viking raids are reminders that war often comes at a human cost. Women were not just collateral, they were central victims, used to send a message, manipulate, and control. Comparing Vikings to other conquerors, we see this pattern repeat. History is full of strategies disguised as cruelty, but learning about these events helps us understand resilience, empathy, and the cost of human ambition. Here's a pause for reflection. If you had lived in that time, would you have survived, adapted, or resisted? There are no easy answers. The stories also teach us about power dynamics and human behavior. Even when surrounded by chaos, some women found ways to reclaim agency, showing us that strength can appear in the most unexpected places. The story of Viking raids and the wives of defeated enemies is chilling. It shows fear, loss, resilience, and survival in a world that was unforgiving. Women endured unimaginable acts, yet some adapted, survived, and even thrived in their new reality. History isn't just about battles or treasures. It's about real people facing unimaginable circumstances. By understanding their stories, we gain perspective, empathy, and a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit. Now, if you found this story captivating and want to learn how small actions can lead to massive results over time, check out our next video on the power of compounding. Just like history changes lives, understanding compounding can change yours. Click on the end screen now and continue your journey of learning and growth.